Welcome, everybody, to Stepping Into Your Leadership. We're excited for a new season here in the studio. And we have no other than the Thomas Armstrong here in the
Yay.
studio. Yay. And just to give everybody a little bio of Tom, if you don't know him already from our previous casts, he is the senior director of programming at our company, but he is an accomplished leader with a proven track record. He manages over 2 million in annual revenue himself. He leads diverse teams, drives measurable organizational improvement. And at our company, over the course of his career, we were talking about it the other day, he's managed literally over 100 people easily, maybe multiple hundreds.
And just to throw in there, it's not because everybody hates me and leaves after 2 days.
Or that you're
Because
so
we have a
old.
lot of people. Or because I'm so old.
One
Doing this for
thing,
100 years. It's like 2 people a year.
Tom, I'm not finished with your beautiful bio. Be
Sorry.
quiet, or you're not going to hear all the nice things I have to say about you. One thing that I think makes him stand out is his sense of curiosity, maniacal curiosity, and his methodical approach to leadership and finding processes to make better leaders and produce quickly. He is introspective and action oriented, which is an interesting combination in my mind. He pushes back. Don't get me wrong, right? He pushes back, but always as a means to understand. And I appreciate that about him in a team, right? In an executive leadership team. He's also a sought after coach, workshop facilitator, keynote speaker. Tom has partnered with clients that include Facebook, the New York City and state departments of education, TradeWeb, and the University of Ljubljana. Did I say that right? In Slovenia?
Yeah, Ljubljana, yeah.
There you go.
It's
That
hard.
sounds better.
It's the nicest thing anybody ever said to me so far, Christine. So keep going.
He's a certified project management professional. That would be PMP for those of you in the biz, and an accomplished musician. Tom combines strategic vision, data-driven decision-making, and a deeply thoughtful approach to leadership development, helping individuals and teams perform at their best. Welcome, Tom.
Whoa, love it.
I've upped my game
I
this time.
feel very good about myself right now. So
All right, well then get ready because I'm going to put
you're
you
gonna
on
knock me down now.
Yeah, I'll put you on the spot with some tough questions.
Okay.
One thing that I've been thinking a lot about lately, and we teach a lot of different leadership and management training courses, and I had at a recent corporate company I was at, some of the folks were pushing back in the beginning saying, hey, we're learning all this stuff about leadership and ourselves and emotional intelligence. But what does that have to do with like our daily management? Like we're struggling in this, like just we need some tips and techniques for actually just managing people and some of that, which was an interesting thing for me to hear and for them to understand that while they were doing this kind of deep dive on themselves and self-reflection, which I do think is important in terms of knowing yourself in order to be a better team leader, but they also at the same time were like, give me some things quick that I can jump in on. And so I'm going to put you, because really in our company, when I think about it, you every year usually get some new people who've never managed before that you work with, but also over time, you've had to manage a lot of folks and get them up to speed on becoming good managers. And so I wanted to ask you what you think every new manager needs to understand right away about managing people.
It's funny because it is what you were just saying. For one thing, you have to be patient about your own development. There is no one thing that's going to solve your problems if you know how to do that thing. I find that really it's like 100 tactics that all, they exist in an ecosystem that becomes a strategy overall, right? But there's literally like 100 probably little things that you do throughout the day that add up to effective or more effective, management compared to what you might have been 5 years prior. So it is a growth period, and you do have to go in these. You have to take each one of these things and know that's going to contribute. It's like investing. Each little thing grows and magnifies on its own, or not on its own, but in conjunction with all the others. So the first thing that I would say someone needs to answer your question would be, first of all, to understand that it's going to be a process and that you are building up that repertoire of behaviors that if you do them, they will combine to make you a strong leader. And the other is that it does really big part of it is knowing thyself, like you said. That's the foundation of it. And, recently I was, took some crisis prevention training, and the core of that is really also like you need to be able to maintain your baseline emotionally when you're under a stressful situation in a crisis, for example.
Mm.
And because you co-regulate with others. So if
Mhm.
someone else is leaving their emotional baseline because they're stressed about whatever and you escalate with them, you actually co-dysregulate each other. And so as a leader, it's a skill. It's one of your primary skills is knowing yourself, knowing what will actually help you to maintain your baseline during high stress situations, because others will regulate with you and
Yeah.
they'll dysregulate with you as well. So that's kind of a really central skill on which almost everything else does sit. So I do advise learning, getting better at managing your own emotions, knowing your triggers, understanding how to maintain your composure and your sense of calm. I was terrible at that early on when I was in high stress situations, and I got better and better. And it is really key for, I think, a strong leader to be able to attain that.
Love that. We talk about emotional intelligence, which, by the way, we've been talking about for decades, but somehow now it's the buzz term. You see it everywhere. Even, you know, even what my daughter, is 19, they talk about it with dating. Oh, he doesn't have enough emotional intelligence. Or you hear him on Love Island talking about emotional
Sure.
intelligence,
Yeah.
but emotional intelligence, we always define it's self-awareness plus self-regulation. And what you just
Mm-hmm.
described is exactly that. If you can have more self-awareness, like, oh, this would happen, and then how do I regulate what's happening to me to not, I love that term, maintain baseline and co-regulate, as you said. That's a great one. All right,
And
so here's,
also,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
mean, key to that is knowing your team, because you need to know the baseline for each member of your team. It's different for everybody. Some are going to be very like seemingly very excitable all the time, like high energy, and leaving their baseline might mean that they've actually become more introspective and quiet. And that's the way that they're dealing with grief or some
Mm,
stress. So baseline doesn't mean that it's escalated necessarily. It just means different than their best day. Like whoever
mm.
their normal operating self is, that's the baseline. Know your own, know your teams as well.
I love that, because everyone's going to have a different approach. Okay, so the other thing I hear from people is that when they go into, like, let's say, a new management role, they can be so excited because they've maybe just gotten this promotion or they've just gotten this new area of responsibility, and somebody believes in me, and I'm going to be the kind of manager either I never had or the kind I always wanted to be, or
Yeah.
you know my parents will be proud of me, whatever the things are that go through your mind, right? And
Yeah.
then there's this, what I call the disillusioned learner phase,
Mm-hmm.
when you go, "Oh my god, people suck and this is hard." And
Yeah.
and we usually go through that before we realize that it has to do with us having to grow. We usually think, "Oh god, these people are terrible.
Yeah.
How no wonder I got this job, like, how they even stay around here this long?" But in that, if you can remember back to when you first became a manager, what was one of the harder lessons you think you had to learn? Because I think it's good for people to know that you just don't come out of this great from the beginning, that it's a lot of hard just practice, and we make a lot of mistakes in our learning. Do you have anything that was a good example of a hard lesson that you had to learn?
Yeah, I'm kind of embarrassed by when I look back on it, it's funny you should say it, because there are things that every once in a while I just remember my first year or first months. But yeah, I remember specifically, because you think when you're the leader, until you've really experienced leadership, it's like you have all these tropes from film, TV, how
Mm,
leaders behave, and then also your bosses from when you were in high school. Maybe you're working at McDonald's or something, and then like those are the sort of archetypes you have to the model role models you have to it's the only thing you have to reference. So I just remember doing stupid little things like someone's far away and I'm pointing at them and doing this motion. I mean, I know it's small, but I'm like, no one wants that. Well, it's just like, it's, by the way, for people that are just listening, it's like pointing and then signaling with your finger, come here, like the drawing your finger to you thing. It's sort of a quote unquote boss move, dominant feeling thing. I would just not like it if someone was doing that to me.
yeah,
Like
like a teacher almost
it's a
in the classroom or
teacherly, it's
something.
definitely sort of paternal or something. It's just little things like that. Like the way that you step into it And it's these little tiny behaviors again that can make someone feel like, dude, don't do that. Just say, hey, can we talk? Because before you were my boss, when we were colleagues, you never did that. And now you're the boss and you're acting bossy, you know?
Did
So
someone have the guts to tell you that, or did you just
no,
figure it
I
out?
just kind of figured that out. That
Okay.
I did have a former colleague get really upset with me, and they started sort of the interaction suddenly became totally different. And I realized later, I thought, was like, what's wrong with them? And then to your point, I realized later is because I was also just kind of talking differently to them. So, and because I thought a boss had to talk that way.
Yeah.
And still, I'm like, I hate talking about this because it's like a very vulnerable like thing, you know, like these are the embarrassing things that I did. They're small, they seem small, but it's like not as failure. It's failing as a leader, I think, to sort of do things that are kind of more like I'm relying on my new authority as my influence. And I kind of quickly learned from it not working out that way. I was losing influence by doing that, that I had to rely on my relationship skills. I had to rely on actually serving. And then I figured out this leadership's kind of funny because I have to actually, if there's anything where there's them versus me win something, they always have to win. So now I have to actually kind of always, I can't use my authority to gain actual benefit. I always have to be serving because then people see that and they appreciate that. They like that. It's like, oh, he's taking care of me, you know, my boss has my back. And then he'll also give me coaching and feedback and support where it's needed, but I can trust that because I have a good relationship with him. So that just took time for me to figure out.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. When you think about five management skills that every, good leader, manager should be able to do, what would you say those five things are? Like, what's one of them?
You know, I mean, anybody who's seen me on this thing can know, like, and it's good. It's good that I'm going to sound redundant because I have patterns that I follow that work, and I've seen them work for years, and they're data driven beyond just my experience. The one-on-ones, you know, anybody that knows me is going to be like rolling their eyes. Oh, here he's talking about his one-on-ones again. So that is a specific behavior that you can do as a supervisor that will dramatically, you know, impact your work in ways you might not notice. But as soon as you stop doing it, you're like, oh, what's happening now? There's assumptions that they have or miscommunications that are going on, you know. So the one-on-one structure, you know, should we talk about it?
I think we should, because honestly, it is the thing that I get maybe the most pushback from, because it scares new managers about their time, because they
Mhm.
are so overwhelmed with the amount of new workload and what they want to get done, that they are absolutely frightened by the feeling of when I lay out the structure of the one-on-one. And I'm a big fan of it too. So I think I think we should go through it. It's worth it, because it is the thing that, even though I get the most pushback from almost every company that I go into, when I come back and they've actually done it, they will say it is the thing that changed everything. It's the one
Yeah.
thing that changed everything. So let's break it
Absolutely.
down.
Okay, breaking it down. So you might, you know, for some of us, we're lucky enough to, some people are lucky enough to be working 40 hours. Others are working 50, 60, 80 hours a week, right? So
Mhm.
it can feel really hard to fit in this time. I have 10 direct reports. So if I spend a half hour every week with each of them, that's 5 hours of my week that goes into my one-on-ones, which is, that's like, you know, a little more than half a day. If it's an 8 hour day, you know, so the but I absolutely maintain it. Although I will say a caveat before I dive into the specifics. There are some folks that have been doing their role for like 4 years. And so we decided together, they might bring it up. Usually it's them that does it. They're like, do you think we might get away with doing this every 2 weeks? And it's a judgment call for me. And if I see that there's some disruption happening, you know, I do have one or two where I do every 2 weeks because they've just been in their role. They know it,
Seniors. Yeah.
and the communication structure is in place for us. We just know each other really well, and there's a lot of trust there. So they can reach out to me if they have a issue and we'll talk about it, but they're actually not that common that they have to do that anymore. So the one-on-ones are less pertinent, but they still have to happen. So it's every 2 weeks for a small group. The majority, it's once a week, and we schedule it. It's in the calendar. It's not spontaneous. Everybody knows. And I usually do, like, for me, I have like 3 on Tuesday, and then I'll, you know, I kind of stack them. So I have this window of time where I'm doing a few and then a few and then a few. And the way the one-on-one is structured is I sit down with my direct. In person is great But if not, I do like to have them on the phone because then I'm not having to look at my screen. Because I already get so much screen time. And so do they. So it's structured so that it's a half hour. Ideally, they speak. So they always lead. So I always start with this statement. I don't even say, how are you doing? And I say, what's up? And then they're able to say whatever it is that's on their mind. And they get 15 minutes. In the beginning, in the first few months of a new direct report, they might take 25 and I get 5. It's not the time for me to do status updates right off the bat. Tell me your status on this client, or how's it going with this thing? If I do that immediately, I am getting the answers I want, but I'm not growing the relationship. I'm kind of squashing the relationship if I jump in right away. So they lead the first, and literally they talk about whatever is important to them. Almost always that's the status of a project, or conflict they have with something that's going on at work, that they need to help resolving. Sometimes it's their mother's sick. Sometimes it's they might have to put their dog down. Sometimes they just got a new dog. Like there's personal stuff that finds its way in there, and I listen and I ask questions, and I'm invested in whatever it is they're sharing, even if it has no interest in my world. Really, I'm interested in what they're interested in. I have to have that curiosity that you mentioned earlier.
I always say that it's their meeting, not yours.
It is their meeting. That's exactly right.
You prepare for the meeting for your boss. They should
Yep.
prepare for this meeting, and you need to
Mm-hmm.
prepare them to prepare, but it's their meeting. I mean, but go
I
ahead.
Totally. I love it when some folks would come to me with their bullet points, and then they just like, oh, here's my bullets I wanted to talk to you about. Others, it's more free form. But, and then when it's my turn, the next 15 minutes of the half hour, I'll almost always ask about their status on certain things. I'll also check in with how they're doing lately, so how's the workload? Those kinds of questions. So that's that half hour. Sometimes there's items that we couldn't touch on that are important to me. I'll set up a different time to talk about that if we can't do it in that half hour. I really try to keep it to the framework of the half hour. So they get 15, I get 15. I always start by saying, what's up? They tell me what's up. I do my thing. And at the end, we say goodbye. I used to also include say something you're grateful for, which I loved. But then we kind of naturally phased out. And now I don't do that, and it's okay.
Yeah. I do think it's important to end on a positive and authentic note, even if it's, because sometimes these one-on-ones, let's face it, after the boss goes, it can be hard, because a lot of times you're having to give some difficult feedback, or they're having to look at the things that aren't working. And so I do think it's important to be able to authentically look at them and say, yeah, I know this was tough, but, I appreciate you showing up and us, being able to talk through this. So that they go out into your company not ready to throw a bomb, from a very negative meeting. You try to have to get them back to baseline, so to speak.
I think, it's their meeting, but it's also about the relationship. And then some of the perks. You're building this relationship with them, which you can then get the benefits from that, as you're asking them to work extra hours sometime or whatever. There is a thing where that bond, they can ask of you stuff that they might not otherwise, it just makes things, it builds trust. It makes things flow much faster during the week. They're not calling me usually throughout the week with stuff that's not urgent, and otherwise they would be. So I'm getting fewer interruptions because they have their little bullets that they're when they start to, and I'll tell them like, this is an opportunity for you during the week just to jot down the things you want to mention during our one-on-one. And so you don't necessarily, I'm always here, but you don't necessarily have to reach out to me. And so usually it does reduce the amount of weekly conversations with them, which sometimes go for more than a half hour. So I've cut those out. So they know they can address everything every week, and it's consistent. If I have to change, right now, I have a one-on-one during today's session that I'm speaking with you, Christine. So I just contact my direct and I said, hey, I have a meeting that goes until, into our one-on-one. Can we move it by half hour? They said yes. So we just kind of reschedule as long as they know what's happening during the week. But I'm not interrupting them with my questions so much during the week. So they have a better workflow. So everybody throughout the week has fewer interruptions. And, it takes a long time to recover from an interruption. Also, we manage assumptions that they might have, because in that conversation, things come up where you're like, oh, hold on, that's not even true. The client is actually da-da-da. You catch those while they're young, while they're just little
baby problems.
And if you don't catch them, and that's what happens when I don't do my one-on-ones, when I stop doing them because it's like summer, whatever it is, I'm doing fewer of them. a month and a half later, there's some huge problem that we didn't
Mhm.
notice. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, if we'd only been talking once a week, this wouldn't have happened.
That's
So that's my pitch.
exactly it, Tom. That's the magic of it, is that we think, "Oh, we're good with this person. We don't need this. We talk to each other every day," or, "I'm at their desk all the time." But the thing is, you're not having dedicated time where they have to think about what they wanna talk about, where they know they have your undivided attention, and it should be undivided, not on your phone or your computer or other things. But I think that's really true. I think the other piece, and I think it's interesting that you went 15-15, because there's that other theory that about once a month it should be 10-10-10, which is 10 minutes them, 10 minutes you, and 10 minutes big picture. so,
Hmm.
so for instance, working with a lot of companies now that were recently affected by tariffs, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
even if they weren't affected by tariffs, what they've been surprised about is that their employees are worried about that. Talk about assumptions, because they have been talking to all their friends in
Yeah.
maybe similar businesses or manufacturing businesses or construction businesses, where they start going, wait, you're having layoffs? No one's talking about that in my firm. Oh my God, am I going to get laid off? Is this next one-on-one a layoff? Like, what's happening? And if you're not saying to them, hey, I know the world, there's a lot of stuff happening in government that might be affecting, you might be thinking affect our industry, but this is how we have defended ourselves against that, or this is where we might be. Just giving them a sense of calm about stuff that they're afraid to ask for could be helpful, that we don't always think about as managers, that they're worried about. And they're
Yeah.
afraid to actually bring that up. So I think that last 10 minutes, maybe once a month, where you're talking big picture, whether it's what's happening in the world that could be affecting their business, or even if it's not affecting your business, but maybe is in the news that they think might be, or also maybe their like work trajectory, where they see
Yeah.
themselves in
Their
5
future.
years, their future. Because that's what this time is about, is to talk about, maybe not just every little micro project, but also kind of the macro picture of what they're learning or what they love about their job, what's next, what they'd like to learn. And then that gives you all this information to chew over when maybe there's a restructure that comes in and your boss comes to you and says, hey, we need to restructure this department. You now know, like, oh, this person actually wants to know more about this, or maybe I could restructure it this way. And you don't have, some of the angst that you might have during those times normally. So I do think that's an important aspect sometimes to include, maybe monthly. I have a
So that's
question.
one.
Okay, that's one. I'm gonna
It's going to be
stop
a
this
6 hour
because
podcast.
it will be. We'll get you back. You'll be on again. We'll get the other ones later, folks. But I do have a question, because before we run out of time, that I want to make sure I get to, and that is delegation, because that
Yeah.
seems to be another pain point with new managers who were predominantly really good doers. That's why they got, this promotion, or they got moved to manager, because they were a great individual contributor. And sometimes the change from individual contributor to understanding that what you have to do is get other people to do things, not just you do things, can be quite difficult. So, what is your kind of philosophy, so to speak, on delegation? How do you decide what to keep, what to give away? Because, this can be different for lots of different people. How do you decide that?
Yeah. How do I decide it? So if it's difficult for me to do, I don't delegate it. If it's something that feels small to me, or like I really kind of is very familiar and I got this, those are more the things I'll delegate. The reason is that to my direct report, that'll probably become the thing that's very difficult to do.
Oh, I
Does that make
see.
sense? So I'm
Because it's might
handing,
be a challenge to them.
yeah, that's the thing that's going to be a challenge to them. The thing that's big to me could make it, they'll be miserable doing. It's just huge, huge lift. Like the assumption is that I've been with the company longer. I have more institutional knowledge. So I'm better at doing things specifically in this company, than my direct, usually. Not always. You like to be surrounded by people that are smarter than you, but that doesn't matter if you have more institutional knowledge and things come quicker to you because you just know that context. You know your role, ideally, right? Not always. But so generally speaking, if I'm delegating the things that to me have become normal and easier, they're like my smaller rocks is a way to put it. They're bigger boulders to them. And I'm then giving them the ability to learn the aspects of my role that they can later take on as they grow, building the bench. So it's not like I'm, if they're already, sweeping floors, I'm not just giving them more floors to sweep, and having that be the challenge. Like, here's more difficult things to do that you already know how to do. I'm trying to give them new challenges because it also keeps them aware of their own growth is happening, even though it's a heavy lift. And the thing is that I have to remember there's a heavy lift for them, even though for me it seems simple. Therefore, the quality will probably drop. So I have to assume a drop in quality and know that it's now my role to sort of help guide them to get that quality up. But I'm not going to necessarily fault them immediately for being, oh, well, this isn't as good as that. Let's talk about just, let's say it's PowerPoint creation, just something, I'm trying to think of something easy to, like maybe I can make some really nice PowerPoints and now I'm delegating that to someone else and their PowerPoints aren't quite at the quality I'm used to from my own. And I go like, why do I even ask my team to do that? That's your point at the beginning of this, right? Because now the PowerPoints look terrible for the clients. And now even I have to do PowerPoints. That shouldn't be my role, You have to assume there will be a change. And then, maybe you map it out. Hopefully, in 2 months we'll get them there. And this is what I have to do to show them how to get to the quality point that's required. And so there's a growth spurt, there's a growth change. So I have to be, as a leader, it's your role to always be thinking longer term than you had to in your previous role. And part of that longer term thinking is my direct reports have a growth curve. And at what point do I expect them to be able to perform at the level that we would consider high quality? Because initially they probably can't. So it's my job to get them there.
Yeah, I just want to say, because you reminded me of this with your PowerPoint example. I have a friend's daughter who did an internship at a big marketing agency this summer, and she's in her, she's in her sophomore year of college, but she was between her freshman and sophomore year of college. And they asked her to do, their decks, their PowerPoints, thinking, this is going to be the same thing you did, right? This process. Meanwhile, she did such a good job and came up with a totally innovative way to do their decks.
Also true.
That now she's hired by this company all year while she's in college to still do their decks. So sometimes they will surprise you, especially young people, with new
They'll do
ways of
better than
doing
you
things.
ever did. Yeah.
Right?
Because they're suddenly using technology you're not familiar with.
That's right.
That literally happens in my work. I see some people, I get totally surprised by their innovations. And so you're also allowing for that to happen. And yeah, they might completely surprise you and come up with something better, higher. Now they're setting a new bar of quality. It doesn't always happen that it's going to drop. Saying like it's better to err on the assumption that it will drop and that you have to give them the guidance to get them there, or decide who. You don't have to be the one training them, but you have to get someone. You have to delegate someone else to also train.
Right.
Maybe it doesn't have to come from you, but they do need the training, and someone needs to do it. So either you do it or you delegate that.
Yeah.
As well.
I think it's good to do a self-assessment if you're a new manager, not right away, but as you're monthly for yourself, to look at it and reflect and go, am I still just taking on more work as a great individual contributor because that's comfortable to me and I'm growing and I'm afraid to put responsibility on other people? Or what am I actually honestly delegating? Think of it a little bit, before you just do it in a panic or because you have to. Because eventually, if you don't, if you have a good boss, they're going to notice it and say, you need to start delegating some things. And better to start with something small, like you said, starting right away, being open and honest with them about we're going to be delegating and I'm new at this too. So let me make sure I'm clear and, work for clarity.
We're all humans and we want to feel good. We want to feel rewards from our good work. And when I'm a new manager, my quality's dropped because I'm in a new role doing new things, not as well as my boss can do them. And that's a painful place to be when you realize, to your point earlier about the, what did you call it? The disillusioned beginner or something like that. Disillusioned learner. So when you're in that phase, it could be like a warm, comfy blanket to do the thing you used to do brilliantly and the thing that got you the promotion, that because you were so good at this other thing. So it is nice to step back in there and do these things well, because you're like, oh, I do this well. I enjoy doing something I do well. And you get less dopamine for sure by, I get dopamine from learning, but I get a lot of good feelings from doing something well, that I'm proud of my work. And when I'm in a new role, I'm frequently a little bit disillusioned with my own capabilities. It's kind of an uncomfortable place.
One thing I did early on in my career, it's so embarrassing, but I used to have to go in, let's say, I was working in classrooms and teaching and, working with young people as you did too. And one of the things that we have to do in our role is get new people to do that, right? Get up and have them and then observe them running the class. And way too often in the beginning, if they were struggling or because I felt so uncomfortable with their struggle, and I'm sure it was not even as noticeable to the kids as it was to me, but it was so uncomfortable for me to sit in that watching them learn that I actually would jump in and take over the
Yeah.
class. Like the worst thing a boss could do, right? Is like
Yep.
say, "Oh, you're doing this, but now I'm going to jump in and show you." And I wouldn't even say it. I would just jump in and like you would see them deflate, but it made me feel like, okay, like I can breathe. And so I had to really look at that. And
Yeah.
somebody saw me, my boss saw me do that. Like one time he came in, and of course I'm nervous because my direct report is floundering in this classroom. And he sees me jump in, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, he's going to be happy that I saved the day. But really, afterwards, I was the one who got some tough feedback that was like, why did you jump in there and save him? Like your job is to watch that happen, take some notes, and then give them some feedback afterwards. But now you need to go apologize that you just jumped in on
Yeah.
this. And I was shattered because I felt such shame and embarrassment that I did that. And I had to go to them and be like, I'm so sorry that I did
Yeah.
that. I did not show any trust in you. I know it's learning. Because when I jumped in, they didn't learn anything. All he was thinking about the whole time was like, what a horrible person. I'm
The
so
hell's this?
embarrassed. Their brains shut
Yeah.
down from learning. So
True.
nobody learns anything. The class I also undermined him in front of the whole class. Like that's done. I probably made
Hmm.
way more wreckage than I helped. So anyway, it's really hard as a new manager to watch somebody fail, but that's how we learn. Those moments of failure are how we learn. And if you can sit through it and then coach them on it, unless it's a crisis, right? If they're going to burn down the place in the process, but
Safety or something. Yeah.
safety or something, right? You're going to lose this client forever. But most of the time, it is not as big a deal as you think. And that learning experience is way more valuable in the growth and arc of them as a worker, a leader, you name it. So, anyway, Tom, we could go on about this forever, and
It's
we
really fun.
will in
Yeah.
future ones. We got through just a couple. We were going to get through more of your tips on being a good manager and this kind of management 101 series, I call it, that we're doing because it is something to be studied and to learn about and to hear from people who have gone through so many things like you have. So thank you for being on here today.
Thanks, Christine. It's a pleasure as always. Bye.